All right, so for our first stretch, we're going to be doing a PNF stretch on the knee flexors called reclining hand to big toe. The client is going to be positioned lying supine on the ground with both legs extended and flat on the ground. I'm going to be positioned kneeling between the client's legs, and my stabilizing hand is going to be grasping the thigh above the knee of the involved leg. My working hand is going to be cupping the heel of the involved leg. So first I'm going to lift the leg into its normal range of motion or until the client says to stop. Is that okay?
Yeah, a little more.
There?
Mm-hmm.
All right, now I'm going to ask the client to contract the targeted muscle group, which is the hamstrings, for 5 to 10 seconds while I provide resistance to inhibit the muscle group. Go ahead. 8, 9, 10. Go ahead and relax. 5, okay. Now I'm going to passively stretch the targeted muscle group for 20 to 30 seconds into a deeper stretch. Is that okay?
A little more. Mm-hmm.
18, 19, 20. Okay. All right, so for this next stretch, we're going to be doing a static stretch called the seated forward bend. And we're going to have the client positioned seated with the legs together and extended in front of them. The toes are going to be pointed upwards, and the hands can either be on the thighs or planted palms down on the ground beside them. I'm going to be kneeling behind the client, and if they're having a hard time keeping their spine and pelvis in neutral, then you can add a folded blanket or pillow beneath them to help tilt the pelvis back to neutral. If they're having any pain in their hamstrings, you can also have them bend their knees a little. So my working hands are going to be positioned on the lower back to lightly apply pressure during the stretch, avoiding pressing on the actual spine. When I ask the client to stretch, I'm going to have them inhale and lengthen the spine, and then exhale, bend forward, and tuck the lower belly in towards the thighs. Now, the important part here is that while they're bending forward, they don't curve their spine up until they reach a natural point around the halfway point. All right, go ahead and inhale. Exhale and bend forward, and this is for about 20 seconds. Keep breathing. Right.
For the seated single leg hamstring stretch, we're going to have the client with one leg fully extended with their toes up, and the other leg fully bent with their heel towards their groin. The assistant will be directly behind the client with 2 working hands on their shoulders. The direction of the stretch will be a forward downward motion. Okay, go ahead and stretch. We'll hold this stretch for about 10 seconds. And at this point, with the PNF method of hold relax, the client will isometrically contract their leg. So go ahead. 5, 6, and they will relax, and we will go for a deeper stretch than the first time for about 10 seconds. 9, 10. All right, relax. For the seated wide leg hamstring stretch, the client will be seated on the floor with their legs fully extended and spread apart and their toes pointed upward. The assistant will be directly behind the client with 2 working hands on their shoulders, and the direction of the stretch will be a forward downward motion. So we'll go ahead and stretch for about 10 seconds for a passive stretch. And for the hold relax method, they will contract isometrically for about 6 seconds. 5, 6. And now we will go for an even deeper stretch for about 10 seconds. Eight, 9, 10. Relax.
Hi there, my name is Martin Valentinez, and I'm going to be assisting my client in a proprioceptive neuromuscular function stretch, specifically the supine spinal twist. The client is going to start in a supine position with her arms stretched out to the sides, and I'm going to come to the side of her body. We'll begin with a 10-second passive stretch done by the trainer. We're going to follow that by a 6-second isometric contraction against the trainer's resistance. Lastly, we will finish up with a 10-second passive stretch, furthering the range of motion of the client through the antagonist muscle stretch, assisted by myself. To begin the stretch, we are going to place the client in the correct position by raising one knee up and across the other leg, just like that. And we're going to place our stationary hand onto the shoulder of the patient to make sure that the shoulder girdle is nice and relaxed on the floor. And I'm going to place my working hand on the top knee of the working leg of the patient. Now we will begin with the 10-second passive stretch. I am going to apply pressure to the working leg until the client feels a slight stretch. Do you feel a slight stretch?
Yes.
Yes. And we're going to hold this position for 10 seconds. And then the second phase would be a 6-second isometric contraction against my pressure so that she would hold a resistance. So I'm going to ask the client to apply resistance to my pressure, and we're going to hold this for 6 seconds. Okay. And the last phase would be again a 10-second passive stretch. However, we are going to further the range of motion with the antagonist muscles stretched. And we're going to begin that now. Okay. Hi there. So we are going to perform the prone knee bend stretch. For this, I'm going to have the client in a prone position, and I'm going to be kneeling down to the side of her body. And to begin the stretch, I will grab her ankle with one hand and have her lift And I will have my stationary arm on the side of her pelvis. And I am just going to apply pressure downward until the patient feels a slight stretch. And then we can repeat 2 to 3 times as needed.
Okay, hello, my name is Santiago Ramirez. Here's my client, Madison Motoyoshi. I'm gonna have her start off with a half pigeon pose, which helps out stretch out the knee extenders and also the hips and other parts in between. So for the half pigeon pose, I'm gonna have my client go into a downward dog pose. Cool. And then from there, I'm gonna have her bring her right leg to her left wrist, and then from there I'm gonna have her relax her right knee down near her right wrist, and I have her bring her left leg further back. That's perfect. Good. Now as the assistant, I will stand over her back leg, and then I am gonna put my stabilizing hand on her lower back. Now you're gonna go completely down, like onto your, there you go, your forearms, good. Then you're gonna bring this knee out a little bit more, perfect. Now here, the stretching the knee and the knee extenders, so perfect. You feel the stretch right here?
Yeah.
Then you can push down a little bit more, but you don't wanna push down too much on the client because you don't wanna bring any pain here. All right, so moving hand was on the hip crest, and then the stabilizing hand was on the lower back. For the second exercise, I'm gonna have her go into a stand quad stretch. So she will stand in front of this couch right here, and then she's gonna use her left leg, and she's gonna put her left foot on top of the couch right there. She's gonna stand close to the couch. Now, as the assistant, I'm gonna advise her to tuck in her hips, so bringing her down, there you go, perfect. And then after she brought in her abdominal, all I'm gonna do as the assistant is keep her lower back stabilized, and then I'm also gonna push her back a little bit, try to stretch out the quads, and then perfect. Good.
We're doing a static kneeling hip flexor stretch. In this exercise, the client is kneeling down on one knee with his opposite leg bent at 90 degrees in front of him, keeping a tall stance through his torso, raising one arm overhead, okay? The key to this exercise here is keeping a strong pelvic tilt throughout the whole exercise. So as you create that pelvic tilt, I'm gonna instruct the client to rotate their pelvis like a wheel to create that pelvic tilt. So go ahead and rotate that wheel, okay, creating that pelvic tilt. From there, I'm going to instruct the client to drive his torso forward as far as possible. This is a small range of motion, okay? Keeping that strong pelvic tilt throughout. Okay, through that, the client will feel that stretch through their hip flexor and then through their quads, okay? We'll hold this for 30 to 60 seconds, and we'll do it 3 times on each side. This is a sideline PNF quadricep stretch. In this stretch, the client is lying on their side with their knees bent approximately at their knee at the height of their hips. To assist the client in this stretch, I will place my stabilizing hand on their knee and my working hand on their ankle. The working hand will flex, will bring the shank anteriorly to the thigh and drive the thigh anteriorly. Okay. This is a range of motion from neutral to 10 degrees. This stretch is created in the hip flexor and in the quadricep. Okay, we'll hold that stretch for 30 to 60 seconds, and we'll repeat that 3 times on each side.